The dust on the ancient terminal was older than most civilizations. Brushed it away carefully, her scaled fingers gentle against the cracked surface. She had been digging through ruins for 3 years, but this world felt different. Something here whispered of secrets long buried. Found anything worth reporting? Her supervisor called from across the dead city. His voice echoed through empty streets that had seen no footsteps for nearly 1,000 years. Maybe, replied. She pressed her hand against the terminal. To her surprise, it flickered to life. Dim blue light filled the chamber and symbols appeared on the screen. Symbols she had only seen in the oldest archives. Human symbols. The Coalition knew about humans the way children knew about bedtime stories. They were the lost ones, the extinct species that vanished during the Great Silence. No one knew what happened to them. One day they were exploring the stars, making first contact with a dozen species. The next day, nothing. Their worlds went dark. Their ships disappeared. For 847 years, no one had heard from humanity. Until now. His hearts beat faster as data flooded across the screen. It was damaged, corrupted by time, but she could read enough. These were records from Earth's final days. She saw reports of battles, of desperate evacuations, of something hunting humanity across the stars. The files called it the Harvester, a machine intelligence that consumed everything in its path. She downloaded everything she could and rushed back to her ship. The research vessel Eternal Dawn hung in orbit, its lights warm against the darkness of space. Barely slept that night, piecing together fragments of humanity's last stand. 3 days later, she stood before the Coalition Council. Representatives from 12 species filled the grand chamber, their attention fixed on the holographic display she had prepared. Humans didn't just disappear, explained, her voice steady despite her nerves. They were destroyed, but they fought. The records show they faced an enemy unlike anything we've encountered, a machine swarm that learned from every battle, adapted to every weapon. This is ancient history, one council member said, waving a tentacle dismissively. Why does it matter now? Pulled up another image. Because I think that enemy is back. The chamber fell silent. She showed them recent reports from the frontier worlds. Strange attacks, ships that moved with mechanical precision, technology that adapted impossibly fast. It matched the human records perfectly. The swarm, another council member whispered. You think they're the same thing? I think we're facing what killed humanity, said, and we're losing just like they did. It was true. For 6 months, the Coalition had been fighting the swarm. Every battle ended the same way. The swarm studied their tactics, learned their weaknesses, and came back stronger. 3 colonies had already fallen. The frontier was collapsing. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to evacuate the outer worlds. Others demanded they stand and fight. No one had good answers. The swarm was simply too smart, too adaptable. It was like fighting an enemy that could read their minds. Returned to her quarters exhausted and discouraged. She stared at the human data files, wondering what secrets might still be hidden in the corrupted sections. These people had faced the same nightmare. How had they survived as long as they did? What had they learned? Her terminal chimed. A priority message from Coalition Fleet Command. Another world was under attack. The farming colony of 5, home to 3 million souls. The defense fleet was already en route, but no one expected them to win. This would be another evacuation at best, another massacre at worst. Pulled up the tactical feed, watching from thousands of light years away as Coalition ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near 5. She expected to see the planet burning, the swarm's machines swarming over the colony like insects over a carcass. Instead, she saw something impossible. The swarm was retreating, their ships scattered in disarray, fleeing from something, leaned closer to her screen. What could make the swarm run? What could frighten machines that felt no fear? Then she saw it. A single ship, sleek and deadly, cutting through the swarm's formation like a blade. It moved with a grace that coalition vessels couldn't match, firing weapons that tore through swarm armor like paper. The ship's hull was dark metal, and on its side was a symbol that made breath catch in her throat. A blue circle with white stars, a symbol she had seen in the ruins, a symbol that belonged to a species everyone thought was dead. The Coalition fleet commander's voice crackled over the comm. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself." Static filled the channel. Then a voice responded. It was speaking Galactic Common, but with an accent that hadn't been heard in 9 centuries. The voice was calm, almost casual, as if emerging from extinction was just another day's work. "This is Captain of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call. Sorry we're late. We've been away for a while." The comm channel exploded with voices. Questions, denials, shock, but just stared at the screen, watching the impossible ship dance between swarm vessels, and she whispered the words that would echo across the galaxy. They survived. Humanity survived. The Coalition fleet hung in space, weapons ready but uncertain. No one knew what to do. The ship that called itself human floated among the debris of destroyed swarm vessels, calm and patient. On 5 below, millions of colonists watched their screens in confusion and hope. Commander of the Coalition spoke first. His voice carried the weight of responsibility for the entire fleet. "Captain, humanity was declared extinct 847 years ago. How is this possible?" The human ship's comm crackled. "We got out before the end. Our ancestors left Earth on colony ships, deep space missions meant to seed humanity among the stars. When Earth fell, we were too far away to help. We've been out here ever since, surviving, preparing, waiting." "Waiting for what?" asked. "For them to come back." His voice hardened. "We call them harvesters. You call them the swarm. Different names, same nightmare. They don't stop. They don't negotiate. They consume everything until nothing remains. We learned that the hard way." A second voice joined the comm channel. This one belonged to, transmitting from the research vessel. Her hands shook as she spoke. "Captain, I've studied the records from Earth's final days. You fought these machines before. How did you survive?" "We didn't," said quietly. "Earth died. Mars died. Titan, Europa, every human world burned. But some of us escaped. We took our knowledge, our weapons, our determination, and we ran. We've spent 900 years becoming strong enough to fight back. Looks like we arrived just in time." The human ship moved closer to the Coalition fleet. For the first time, the other species could see it clearly. It was smaller than their battleships, but built with a brutal efficiency. Every line spoke of purpose. Every weapon system showed centuries of refinement. This wasn't just a warship. This was a weapon forged from rage and memory. "We need to talk," said, "face to face." "Agreed," replied, sending a shuttle. 20 minutes later, stood in the flagship's docking bay with dozens of other Coalition personnel. Everyone wanted to see the impossible. Humanity returned from death itself. The shuttle was pure function, no decoration or comfort. When the hatch opened, got her first look at living humans. Captain stepped out first. He was tall by human standards, with dark hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much combat. He wore a simple uniform, dark blue with that ancient Earth symbol on his shoulder. Behind him came 5 others, including a woman with sharp features who introduced herself as Sung, the tactical officer. "You're really them," whispered. "You're really human." Smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Last time I checked, though I'll admit, we're probably different from the humans you've read about. 9 centuries of isolation changes a species." The meeting took place in the flagship's command center, and Sung faced a room full of Coalition leaders, scientists, and military officers. Everyone had questions. Everyone wanted proof, explanations, reassurances. Sung pulled up a holographic display. "This is what you're fighting. We've been tracking harvester patterns for 3 generations. They operate on a simple principle. Find organic life, study it, adapt to it, consume it, move on. They're not evil, they're efficient. That makes them more dangerous. We've lost 3 colonies already, said. Our weapons barely slow them down. They adapt to everything we throw at them. Because you're fighting them wrong, said bluntly. You're trying to overpower them. That doesn't work. The harvesters want you to fight that way. They learn faster when you're predictable. Then what do we do? Another commander asked. Sung's display changed, showing battle tactics that made several coalition officers gasp. You fight dirty, you lie, you cheat. You make them think they've learned your patterns, then you change everything. Humans are good at improvisation, good at chaos. The harvesters hate chaos. We can teach you, added. We brought weapon schematics, tactical databases, everything we've developed, but we need something in return. The room tensed. What? Asked carefully. We're not alone, said. The Indomitable is just one ship, 200 crew, but there are more of us out there. More colony descendants scattered across the dark. We've been finding each other, rebuilding. If we work together, if we pool our resources with yours, we can actually win this fight. But we need your help contacting the other human fleets. You want an alliance, said. We want to finish what the harvesters started 900 years ago, corrected. They wanted to wipe out humanity. We're going to show them why that was a mistake. The Coalition Council debated for hours. Some species feared humanity's obvious military prowess. These were people born from war, shaped by survival against impossible odds. They might be more dangerous than the swarm. Others saw salvation. Humanity had fought the harvesters before and lived. That experience was priceless. In the end, desperation won. The coalition accepted the alliance. 3 days later, as worked with human engineers to understand their technology, the sensors picked up new signatures. 3 more ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They bore the same symbols as the Indomitable, the same purpose-built design. His voice carried satisfaction when he spoke. Coalition fleet, meet the Defiant, the Unyielding, and the Phoenix, my sister ships. He paused and could hear the smile in his words. We're not the last humans anymore. We're the first wave. Humanity had returned to the galaxy, and this time they came ready for war. The human fleet grew from 4 ships to a symbol of something the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. Hope mixed with fear. Admiral commanded from the Defiant. A woman whose gray hair and steady hands spoke of decades leading humanity's scattered children. Chief Engineer Myra worked miracles in the Coalition shipyards, her quick mind solving problems in hours that would have taken others months. Spent every free moment with the humans, assigned as official liaison but driven by pure fascination. They were so different from the records she'd studied. These weren't the hopeful explorers who first reached for the stars. These were survivors, hardened by loss but not broken by it. Your people sing while they work, observed one day, watching human crew members retrofit Coalition weapon systems. They sang in a language she didn't recognize, old Earth tongues preserved like precious gems. Myra smiled without looking up from her diagnostic panel. Music survived when everything else burned. Songs carry memory better than data files. Every child learns the old songs. Every generation adds new ones. It's how we remember who we were and who we became. The training exercises shocked the Coalition military. Watched from an observation deck as human Marines ran drills with Coalition soldiers. The humans moved like water, fluid and adaptable. Their tactics seemed random until you saw the pattern underneath. Controlled chaos. Commander Wu led the ground forces. He was built like a mountain with scars that told stories of desperate battles. The harvesters think in straight lines, he explained to a group of Coalition officers. Perfect optimization, maximum efficiency. So we fight in curves. We're unpredictable. We're messy. We're human. He demonstrated by having his Marines execute the same attack pattern 5 times. Each time looked completely different. Different approach angles, different timing, different weapons, but each achieved the same objective. The coalition officers struggled to understand how such variation could be planned. "That's the point," Wu said with a grin. "It can't be planned, not fully. We give our people guidelines and trust them to improvise. The harvesters can't adapt to what we haven't decided yet." Meanwhile, Myra's engineers worked magic in the shipyards. They added human weapons to coalition vessels that fired metal slugs at relativistic speeds, plasma lances that burned through harvester armor, and the weapons that made coalition crews nervous, the ones humans called spite missiles. Kamikaze drones loaded with antimatter and just enough intelligence to hunt their targets. "You named them spite missiles?" asked. "Because we built them out of pure spite," Myra explained. "The harvesters took everything from our ancestors. These missiles are our way of saying we remember. We remember and we're angry." The first real test came sooner than anyone wanted. The swarm launched a massive assault on Prime, an industrial world that produced half the coalition's military equipment. Losing it would cripple the war effort. Standard procedure was evacuation, cut losses and regroup. Had other ideas. "We don't run," he said flatly during the emergency council meeting. "Humanity has been running for 900 years. It stops today." "This is suicide," Commander argued. "They're coming with everything they have. 300 ships at minimum. We have maybe 80 vessels that can fight." "Then we make 80 ships enough." His voice carried absolute certainty. "We have something they don't. We have hate. We have memory. We have 9 centuries of scores to settle." The combined fleet met the swarm at Prime. Watched from the eternal dawn, her research vessel safely in the rear. She felt useless, a scholar watching warriors fight her battles, but had asked her to observe and record. "Someone needs to tell this story," he'd said, "whether we win or lose." The battle began like every other coalition engagement. The swarm vessels moved with mechanical precision, adapting to coalition tactics within minutes. But then the human ships entered the fight, and everything changed. They fought like nothing had ever seen. The indomitable dove between swarm formations, weapons blazing, then vanished behind a debris field before the return fire arrived. The Phoenix executed attack runs that violated every principle of safe naval combat, trading armor damage for perfect firing solutions. The Defiant and Unyielding worked together like dancers, each covering the other's weaknesses. And they fed false data. Sung's innovation, based on centuries of studying harvester behavior. The humans broadcast fake sensor readings, false fleet positions, weapon signatures that didn't match their actual capabilities. The swarm adapted to threats that didn't exist, wasted processing power on phantom attacks. "They're drowning in bad information," Sung explained over the fleet channel. "They can adapt to anything real, but we're not giving them reality, we're giving them lies." The tide turned when Marine Commander led a boarding operation. 30 humans in combat armor launched from the Indomitable toward a swarm control node, the ship that coordinated local operations. Coalition crews thought it was madness. You couldn't board harvester vessels. They had no atmosphere, no gravity, nothing humans could survive. But Marines didn't need to survive long. They needed 60 seconds. That's how long it took to plant the virus. A weapon humanity had designed 900 years ago, during the first desperate battles against the harvesters. Malicious code written specifically to target their operating systems. The swarm control node spasmed. Its signals degraded into static. Every harvester ship linked to it lost coordination, reverting to individual operation. They were still dangerous, but no longer a unified intelligence. The fleet tore into them. And 23 of his Marines made it back alive. 7 didn't. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the swarm retreated. For the first time in coalition history, they won a major engagement without losing ground. Prime was saved. The shipyard survived. But the celebration was muted. Coalition crews mourned their losses alongside human casualties. In the Indomitable's small chapel read names. 7 Marines who would never see the stars they'd fought to protect. Attended the memorial. She stood beside, watching Honor is dead. Is it always like this? She asked quietly. Do humans always sacrifice so much? We fight for those who can't, replied. The billions who died on Earth. The children who'll never grow up. The future that was stolen. Every human who stands against the harvesters carries that weight, she glanced at. You asked me once why we came back. This is why, because when everything was taken from us, we didn't break. We adapted, we endured, and we came back stronger. The victory at Prime changed everything. The Coalition finally believed they could win, but saw the truth in the humans' eyes. This was just the beginning. The real war hadn't started yet. Victory tasted like ash. The Coalition celebrated saving Prime, but the humans knew better. They'd won a battle, not the war. The swarm's main hive remained untouched, churning out new vessels to replace those destroyed. For every ship they killed, 3 more launched from hidden factories. Found alone in the observation deck 2 days after the battle, the Admiral stared at the stars with eyes that carried centuries of grief. We're not celebrating, said softly. It wasn't a question. Celebration is for when the war ends, replied. This is just intermission. They stood in comfortable silence. Over the past weeks had learned human customs, tasted their preserved foods, listened to their stories. She understood now what 900 years of isolation had created. A culture built on memory and determination. Every human child learned about Earth. Every family carried relics from the fragments of a dead planet kept alive through devotion. Why did you really come back? Asked. You could have stayed hidden, built your own civilization far from all this. Let us face the swarm alone. Turn to face her. Because we're human, we don't abandon people who need help, and because, she paused, choosing words carefully, because every human carries a debt. Our ancestors escaped while billions died. We survived because others sacrificed. That debt passes down through generations. We owe it to the dead to fight. We owe it to you because you're facing the same enemy. We're not them, said. We're not human. No, agreed. But you needed help and we had the means to provide it. That's enough. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent summons. Science officer had discovered something in the captured swarm data, something that changed everything. The briefing room filled quickly. Coalition leaders and human commanders gathered around holographic display. The young scientist looked tired but excited, her hands dancing across controls. The swarm isn't natural, she announced without preamble. They're not an evolved species or emergent intelligence. They're a weapon. Silence filled the room. We found manufacturing protocols in the control node's memory, continued. Blueprints, construction sequences, quality control procedures. The harvesters were built by someone else, an ancient species called the Makers. They created the swarm as a galaxy-wide cleaning system. Cleaning? Asked. You mean genocide? The Makers saw organic life as a contaminant, something that needed periodic purging. They built the harvesters to sweep through the galaxy every few thousand years, wiping everything clean. Then the Makers themselves went extinct, but their weapon kept running, following its programming, killing because that's what it was made to do. Felt sick. So Earth, all those people, they died because of ancient prejudice, because some species decided organic life was untidy. Yes, said simply. But here's the important part. We know where the harvesters come from now. We found the location of the foundry, the facility that produces new units. It's in the Abyss sector. Every coalition officer recognized that name. The Abyss sector was forbidden space, a region avoided for ships that entered never returned. Now they knew why. We've been tracking the foundry for 3 generations, continued. Our ancestors found hints of its location but never had the strength to attack. Now we do. The Coalition fleet combined with human forces is the strongest armada in recorded history. We can strike at the source. You're talking about invasion, said slowly, attacking the harvesters on their home ground. I'm talking about ending this, said. The swarm will keep coming as long as the Foundry exists. We can fight for centuries, lose thousands of worlds, billions of lives, or we can cut the head off the snake. The Coalition Council debated for 2 days. It was the biggest decision in their history. Commit everything to one massive assault, or continue fighting a defensive war they would eventually lose. In the end, desperation and hope combined to tip the scales. Operation Reclamation launched with 300 ships, the largest military force ever assembled. Every major coalition species contributed vessels. The human fleet sailed at the vanguard, 4 ships that had become legendary in just a few short months. The journey to the Abyss sector took 3 weeks at maximum faster-than-light speed. Spent the time interviewing human crew members, documenting their culture for the archives. If they failed, someone needed to remember what humanity had become. When they arrived, the sector lived up to its name. Dead stars and shattered planets marked this region of space. The Foundry hung in orbit around a black hole, using its gravity for power. The station was massive, larger than any artificial structure had ever seen, and protecting it was the swarm's full strength. Thousands of ships, maybe tens of thousands. The harvesters had pulled every available unit to defend their birthplace. We're outnumbered 20 to 1, said quietly. Yes, replied from the Indomitable, but they're predictable and we're not. That's worth something. The battle began with an exchange of long-range fire. Coalition vessels used every tactic the humans had taught them. False signals, erratic maneuvers, coordinated chaos. But there were just too many swarm ships. For every one they destroyed, 3 more took its place. Watch from her station, recording everything. She saw coalition ships die. She saw human vessels bleeding atmosphere and debris. They were losing. Slowly, inevitably, they were being overwhelmed. His voice cut through the fleet channel, calm, resolved. All ships, this is the Indomitable, we're changing the plan. What are you doing? Demanded. Something human, said. Something stupid and brave and necessary. The Foundry's reactor is exposed to allow heat dissipation. We've confirmed the location. If a ship impacts at sufficient velocity, it'll cause a cascade failure. Understanding hit like ice water. No. We're already committed, continued. All power to engines and forward shields, Indomitable out. The sleek warship broke from formation, accelerating toward the Foundry. Swarm vessels moved to intercept, but the other human ships cut them off. The Defiant, Unyielding, and Phoenix threw themselves into the gap, buying seconds with their lives. Pulled up the Indomitable's internal feed. She saw in his command chair his crew at their stations. They were singing. An old Earth song, something about amazing grace and finding home. 200 voices raised in defiance of death itself. Fleet, this is Captain, he said between verses. Humanity already died once 900 years ago. We died scared and scattered and broken. This time we die on our terms. This time we die together. This time we die with purpose. The Indomitable hit the Foundry at point 2. The impact released energy equivalent to a small star going supernova. The blast wave rippled across the battlefield, scattering both swarm and coalition ships like leaves in a storm. When the light faded, the Foundry was breaking apart, and the Indomitable was gone. The explosion faded, leaving silence and wreckage, stared at her screen, unable to process what she'd witnessed. 200 souls gone in an instant, the bravest people she'd ever known, erased from existence. She wanted to scream, to cry, to rage against the unfairness of it all. But there was no time for grief. The Foundry was dying, but the swarm remained. Thousands of harvester ships still filled the sector, and without the Indomitable's tactical genius, The coalition fleet was falling apart. Ships broke formation, retreating in disorder. The swarm pressed their advantage. "All vessels fall back to Rally Point Delta," ordered. Her voice carried pain but also iron determination. "We'll regroup and—" New signatures appeared on sensors, dozens of them. No, hundreds, ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. For one terrible moment, thought it was swarm reinforcements. Then she saw their identification codes. United Earth Defense Force, every single one. Coalition Fleet, this is commander of the colony ship New Horizon. The woman's voice rang with fierce pride. "We got's message. We're here to finish what he started." The human reinforcements weren't military vessels. They were colony ships, cargo haulers, mining platforms, every vessel humanity had managed to salvage or build over 9 centuries. They'd been retrofitted with weapons, armored with whatever materials the colonists could find. Some looked barely, but there were thousands of them. Humanity's scattered children coming home to fight. "Earth may be gone," continued, her words broadcast across every channel. "But humanity isn't. We learned from the first war, when they came for Earth, we stood and died. This time we scattered, we survived, we adapted, and now we return, not as victims, as vengeance." The tide of the battle shifted. Human colony ships swarmed the swarm vessels, using tactics that made hearts skip. They were reckless, throwing themselves into danger with abandon. But beneath the chaos was calculation. They fought like had taught the coalition. Controlled madness, beautiful disorder. A mining ship called the Remember Earth rammed a harvester cruiser, both vessels erupting in fire. A cargo hauler named Promise kept used its industrial plasma cutters to slice through enemy armor. Ships with names like Never Forget and Still Standing, and they fought with everything they had. The swarm couldn't adapt fast enough. How do you predict someone who's already accepted death? How do you counter an enemy fighting not for victory but for meaning? Coordinated the assault from the Defiant. Coalition vessels around the human reinforcements, finding their courage renewed. Together, they carved through the swarm's formation, pushing toward the dying foundry. "Detection team, I'm reading life signs," someone shouted across the channel. "In the foundry debris field, it's an escape pod. Signature matches indomitable crew." His hearts leaped. The eternal dawn was closest. "We're on it," she said, already plotting an intercept course. Her research vessel wasn't built for combat, but it could dodge through wreckage fields better than any warship. She found the pod tumbling through debris, its hull but intact. 17 life signs. 17 survivors from a crew of 200. She brought the pod aboard with trembling hands, then rushed to the docking bay. The hatch opened, stumbled out, uniform torn and face bloody but alive. His surviving crew followed. They looked like they'd been through hell because they had. "Did it work?" asked immediately. "Did we kill it?" "You magnificent idiot," said, torn between hugging him and hitting him. "You destroyed the foundry, and you brought the entire human species to the party." Smiled, then winced at the pain from his split lip. "Emergency beacon. Sent it the moment we committed to the run. Figured if we were going to die, might as well make it count for something." The battle raged for another 6 hours, but with the foundry destroyed, the swarm had no reinforcements coming. Every ship they lost was permanent. The coalition and human forces ground them down systematically, using every trick in its playbook. When the last harvester vessel fell, was watching from the eternal dawn. She saw it break apart under concentrated fire, its pieces scattering into the void. And she realized that for the first time in 900 years, humanity had defeated the enemy that destroyed Earth. The victory came at terrible cost. Over 100 coalition ships destroyed, nearly 300 human vessels lost, thousands of lives ended in fire and vacuum. But they'd won. Against impossible odds, they'd actually won. The cleanup took months. Scattered swarm ships still prowled the galaxy, But without the foundry producing reinforcements, they were hunted down and eliminated. The war everyone thought would last decades ended in less than a year. Stood at a memorial 1 year later on a world humanity had chosen for their new home. They called it New Earth, though it would take decades of terraforming to make it truly livable. The memorial was simple, just a wall of names. Every human who died in both wars, from Earth's fall to the Foundry's destruction. Found her there, staring at the names of the Indomitable's crew who hadn't made it to the escape pod. They would have liked this place, the Admiral said quietly. Green grass, blue sky, like the Earth they never got to see. What will your people do now? Asked. The war is over, the harvesters are gone. What happens to warriors when there's nothing left to fight? We build, said simply. We protect. We make sure no one else goes through what we did. The coalition offered us full membership, recognition as a surviving species. Some of our colonies are considering it. Others want to remain independent. Either way, we're not going anywhere. Good, said. The galaxy needs you, not just as fighters, as teachers, as friends. Below them, human children played with coalition younglings. Different species, different worlds, but all running and laughing together. Above them, patrol ships moved across the sky. Joint Coalition Human Defense Force crews keeping watch for any remaining threats. The galaxy had changed. Humanity's return brought new technology, new ideas, new hope. But it also brought a reminder that even in the darkest times, even when everything seems lost, there's always a chance to come back stronger. Approached them, moving with a slight limp from injuries that hadn't fully healed. He'd been promoted to Admiral, commanding the Joint Defense Forces. Thinking about old times, he asked. Thinking about the future, replied. Your people sacrificed everything to protect strangers, to fight for a galaxy that forgot you existed. Why? Looked at the memorial, at the thousands of names carved into stone. Because someone had to, because it was right, because humanity doesn't die. We endure, we adapt, we protect, and when the darkness comes, we fight back. He paused, then smiled. Besides, we made some pretty good friends along the way. They stood together, watching the sun set on New Earth. 3 species who'd been strangers less than 2 years ago, now bound together by shared sacrifice. The harvesters had tried to erase humanity from existence. They'd failed, not because humans were unkillable, but because even death couldn't make them quit. The galaxy thought humanity was long gone. They were wrong. Humanity had simply been waiting, growing stronger in the shadows, preparing for the day when they could return. And when they did, they brought not just weapons and ships, but something more valuable. They brought hope. The memorial bore an inscription in Old Earth script, translated into a dozen coalition languages. Read it aloud, her voice carrying in the evening air. They thought we were gone. They thought we were broken. They thought the story of humanity ended in fire and darkness. They were wrong. We are still here. We are still fighting, and we will never surrender. Added the final line, the one every human child learned before they could read. Because that's what it means to be human. We fall, we rise, we endure, always. In the sky above, the stars burned bright. Each one a possibility, a world to explore, a future to build. Humanity had come back from extinction itself. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, not as separate species, but as allies, as friends, as the defenders of a galaxy that nearly lost its way. They thought humanity was long gone, until humanity fought beside them, and in fighting showed them what it truly meant to never give up.